AI will never be a trusted business partner. Let's
Right.
be honest. And again, I'm thinking about it from the top down, right? So you can't
Yep.
allow AI to run your boardroom. That's number one. You can't allow AI to go into someone's business and say, hey, we noticed you had these three different events that take place over the last 3 years in your business. If you actually execute this plan or that plan, you can actually be more profitable. That's called being a trusted business partner. AI can't do that, at least not yet.
This is the AI First podcast, hosted by me, John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box. Join me for real conversations with CIOs and tech leaders about reimagining work with the power of content and intelligence and putting AI at the core of enterprise transformation. My guest today is Amel Edmond, the CIO of Withum Smith & Brown, and I'm your host, as always, John Herstein, Chief Customer Officer at Box. Every episode, we talk with CIOs, IT leaders, and AI pioneers to share their real-world insights that you can act on today. And with that, let's dive into today's conversation. Welcome, Amel.
Thank you for having me, John.
It is my pleasure. Can we start with a bit of background on Withum, Smith & Brown, and then a bit about your role and the scope of your role over there?
Certainly. Withum Smith and Brown is just over 50 years old. It's an accounting firm that's actually stretched its arms around advisory services, and we do a lot of obviously audit, tax, those sort of things. But advisory has really been an interesting sweet spot for us. Again, just a little over 50 years old. We've grown drastically over the last 10 years. In my tenure, I arrived, the headcount was approximately 750 users. Currently, we have just over 3,000. A lot of that growth has been over the last couple of years because of just what's happening in the industry around private equity. There's other variables in the accounting space. But yeah, again, very exciting firm to be a part of. I originally came from Eisner came here as the head of security and infrastructure and graduated to the CIO role. My team is very, very diverse. We actually pride ourselves on being able to manage just about everything in-house, whether it is cybersecurity or app development and even operational support. All of that is being handled internally from a very, very lean and super productive team.
That's incredible. And I think you account yourselves among the top 25 U.S. accounting firms. Is that right?
That is correct. Top 25 firm, still vastly growing, trying to break that top 20 barrier. But I believe we'll get there still.
Can you tell us a bit more about the advisory services line? You said that seems to be a faster growing kind of portion of what you do, and maybe a bit different than kind of typical accounting. What exactly is included in that?
Yeah, so advisory services really encompasses a lot of the technical aspects of advisory. So we have separate arms underneath that practice. That practice is actually led by very, very smart Jim Burke, who's pretty much a rock star in the accounting industry. He heads up our cybersecurity team. We have a digital transformation team. We have an artificial intelligence team. We even have a healthcare business intelligence team. So on top of that, there's also SOC audits that we perform. We perform, PCI, Sarbanes-Oxley. There's nothing that this team can't do, and they're led by very, very smart individuals who are really laser focused on customer service.
Incredible. What I want to kind of pivot to now is a bit about you, and we've talked a lot about your fascination with how things work and curiosity about the world, both technical and non-technical. But I'm wondering, what is your personal why for investing and making the effort around AI today?
AI, we all know, has different facets to it. There's generative AI, there's regular AI, there's all these different flavors to it. For me, technology. It's technology as a whole. I pride myself on not being a CIO, but more so as a technologist, and I think the rest of my team follows suit. Technologist, the way that I define it, is someone who has a passion for it, someone who'll be doing this even if they were not getting paid for it.
Mhm.
Ultimately, it's nice to be paid for it, but ultimately, again, it's about the passion for what you're doing. Now, to answer your question around artificial intelligence, it's really the biggest craze, but everyone knows that it's been in the works for about 40 years, if not more. But
Yep.
it's really probably the biggest change in technology that I've seen really taken over globally. I believe in the last 2 or 3 years, there have been more AI-based companies starting up and selling and just really like being very, very profitable in the last 3 years than any other time in technology history outside of the dot-com boom. So that's why I think that again, AI is definitely going to be revolutionary. It continues to play an impact across the board, whether it is accounting, finance, even military applications. AI has been there, and right now it's become way more mainstream. Even the time it takes to develop applications, or even code checking, for example, and it has been drastically reduced, and the impact on our user base or resources has been drastic.
I want to talk about the sort of application of AI and how you're putting AI into practice. And I think you've been at this for some time now. One of the things that we talked about earlier was a reporting automation project that you worked on around 1099s. And I'm sort of curious if you can give us a bit of background on what that effort was all about, what the problem was, kind of how AI helped you solve it, and what are some of the outcomes that you've seen as a result of it.
Yeah, without spilling the secret sauce,
Yeah.
yeah, the 1099 process, we all know that, it can be very arduous. And if you actually, before I even dive into that, let's go back for a second to understand the need or the urgency around artificial intelligence, specifically to accounting.
Okay.
There are much less people graduating out of college historically with CPAs or with accounting degrees in general than than have been historically. What that does for us is it creates a resource shortage. Obviously, we can look at resource options internationally, which we have. We actually have a great team led by an international leader out in India that actually spent up 2 offices currently out in the India space. But the problem here is the work will still be there. So the advent of artificial intelligence brings about a great opportunity where we can look at certain processes in the tax or audit or even advisory space to try to streamline that and really empower our team, not so much to constantly be focusing on the actual task or checking off that box or going into an Excel spreadsheet and ensuring all the tasks are being executed effectively. That is something that can be done via RPA, robotic process automation, or artificial intelligence as we continue to leverage this. Now,
Right.
how we're doing that in the sense of our 1099 or 1040, all these other IRS codes, we're literally documenting and understanding what our processes are. And then the issue that we always find is processes get tweaked based on leadership and location. The first step is always to standardize that process. Once we
Right.
have that process standardized, in the case of this, and in this case it's 1099, once we have that process completely standardized, we try to inject automation in portions of that process, whether it is by creating an entire different workflow or adding some sort of script here and there. That's how we started down on this journey. But ultimately, we started to make these scripts a lot larger and really compress down the process of reviewing that 1099. And once we were comfortable with the process being, with the answer of the process being accurate, we started to allow to expand even further. Again, that 1099 process is fairly arduous at times, but the goal ultimately is to, again, free up our team to actually own the process and not the task itself.
Yeah, something you mentioned in there that's really struck me in the last kind of few weeks of conversations with customers is that everyone seems to start with making a piece of the process more efficient, maybe faster, maybe automate that piece. But what's maybe taking a bit longer is to take a big step back and look at the entire process, right? And think about how you re-engineer that whole process, given these capabilities. And I think it's something we could touch on a little bit later in the conversation. You also mentioned a cloud-based audit platform that you've been working on that sort of combines the power of some of the newer AI technologies, but also machine learning. And let's not forget about machine learning as being a really important enabler of some of these kinds of capabilities today. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen as a result of sort of the combination of these capabilities? And are there any specific metrics that you found, surprising in terms of how you can improve given these capabilities?
Yeah, so our audit team has been one of the first, actually, if not the first, to actually complete an entire audit from beginning to end on the new caseware product called the Dynamic Audit Solution. That
Okay.
platform has been fairly revolutionary because when we looked at the industry maybe 7 or 8 years ago, firm leadership decided it was worthwhile to start investing in heavy artificial intelligence, but something that had that built in from the ground up. In
Hmm.
comes Caseware, who actually proposed a very good option for us that we can, and then we went down that avenue along with them. 2 years ago, we actually started that process on testing exactly how it's going to impact our organization, specifically on the audit side. From there, we actually ran through an entire audit and it was very successful. And we started that process of transitioning away from the existing platform to the new platform. And what it actually does is it actually helps you streamline a lot of these different processes. And again, this is all about saving time. And for us, if you back away from the table a little bit, without looking at all the nuts and bolts, we back away from the table. Ultimately, how does a firm like ours break into the top 20? We have to be more competitive. In order to be more competitive, sometimes it's about providing the right amount of the right technology. On the other side, it might be the business side. We can actually just be more competitive price wise. So if you're actually shrinking down the time of engagement, if you're actually able to shrink down the cost to your customer, ultimately you're able to produce the same amount of work, if not better, because of the consistency and less human errors, as well as you can reduce the price of the engagement. And that's our go-to-market play.
Right. I mean, and that's a great point. It's not just about doing things faster, but actually with higher quality at the same time. And normally those things essentially compete with each other. You're able to do both.
Correct. Correct.
One other project that we talked about was your work with one of our great partners, Varonis. And maybe you could talk a bit about what you've done there, how that's helped you make all the content you have in Box even more secure than it was already.
Absolutely. First and foremost, you have to understand that the majority, if not all of our information is actually sitting in Box, specifically all of our client information. That allowed us to share and collaborate with our clients very, very effectively. Now, layering in Varonis was a no-brainer. Varonis allows us to now reduce the amount of exposure that we have. For example, if a new person comes in and that person works for, let's say, the finance team or the HR team, they don't
Right.
necessarily need access to the entire client directory. And Varonis will allow us to do just that. Data segmentation as well as data security, as well as allow us to understand fully exactly where all of our data is, whether it is on the Box ecosystem or the Microsoft ecosystem. So having that single pane of glass for governance is going to be a game changer. It's currently still being released, but we should have it completely in production by the end of this month.
All right. Well, I will check back with you in November and we'll see how things are going.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to pivot kind of back to AI and maybe step out a little bit and talk about how you think AI will start to allow your practitioners to surface insights from all of the client content that you have. You mentioned all of your contents in Box. Obviously, we've got capabilities for AI on top of all that content, but how are you starting to think about making use of those capabilities from AI combined with all the content you have? Are there early ideas or use cases you're already exploring in this realm?
Yeah. So one great use case is with our legal team. Again, very, very strong team, but again, very lean. So how does a team of that size manage all the different agreements and engagement letters that are coming in on almost a regular basis daily? They look through, 50 contracts almost a day. How do you summarize one versus the other? Enter Box AI. We can literally have all those contracts in one repository. They can actually do a comparative between all of those and actually give summaries relatively quickly. Some of these contracts, believe it or not, can be hundreds of pages. And right now, our legal team is able to look through a contract, get an accurate summary of that file, and even do a comparative between one version and another. I think that's one of the major ways that we have immediate impact from, let's say, Box AI or AI in general. You can do some of the similar things in Copilot for files that are sitting in the Microsoft ecosystem. Some people are using that, but there's always that hesitancy to leverage Copilot just because of the sheer fact that you're not 100% comfortable with having all of your information in that Microsoft ecosystem unless you're certain that the data has been segmented and the proper layers of security have been put in place. Thus, like I said before earlier, having a platform like Box or Varonis as a data governance layer helps make that possible.
Yeah, what's nice about that is you've already agreed to a set of policies and a hierarchy for who's got access to what, and that's already instantiated inside of your Box instance. And now you're just bringing AI to that already existing structure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the internal processes that are being improved. What about on the external side? So if you think about things like advisory services, are you starting to use AI at all to help improve some of the deliverables, make analysis faster, richer insights for clients? Like how is AI starting to affect your customer facing work?
Well, the biggest customer facing product that we're working on right now actually is being handled by our innovation team. Great team out there, heavy duty app development, and definitely focused 100% on artificial intelligence. They're working on something that's really revolutionary. It should be ready for full deployment by the end of December of this year. It is going to be a client experience portal. What that does is it's a AI based solution where the client can go into a portal, access all of their information, upload files, have communication or collaboration with the people that are actually involved in their respective jobs or engagement, and have full visibility. So no more cloak and dagger, no more trying to figure out exactly, hey, how can I get an itemized bill and how much time did Mel spend on my job. Everything is there, full disclosure. And again, that's part of our go-to-market strategy to make us fully transparent to our clients and allow them to be a part of that journey for their engagement.
I love that idea of sort of a client facing experience portal that's AI first. So every interaction is going to be powered that way.
Exactly.
And it's got all the context of the relationship you have with them, all the deliverables, the documents, everything is all right there. And interestingly, we're thinking about a very similar thing for our own sort of digital front door into our support organization. So maybe we can compare notes on that after the podcast.
Absolutely. And don't forget, again, I love picking on my legal team because we work with them so closely.
Yep.
We're also working with Box on an AI based contract management portal with your team. So hopefully more to come from that very, very soon.
Yeah, I would definitely love to talk more about that. Maybe it's a little bit too soon, but can you give us a sense of just sort of what is the vision for this?
Yeah, so the vision is a master repository for all contracts globally, and being able to, instead of on file by file and folder by folder basis, you can literally have a full visibility of every contract, cost per license, how many people that's involved in it, when it's actually going to be the contract is going to be terminated, who was involved in the execution, signatures. You literally have all of that in one single pane of glass. Obviously, the repository is one aspect of it. The AI on the back end will be able to extrapolate that information and present it to you in whatever Power BI format or a dashboard form, but you can actually interact from the dashboard to the live document interactively. And on top of that, the other goal here is to have multiple people be able to interact with a file accordingly. So if you have a senior partner that's looking through an agreement and there's something that's still missing from an IT perspective, you can literally say, wait a minute, this vendor doesn't have a SOC 2 type 2 in your repository. These are your minimum qualifications. No one can sign this agreement. This way, nothing slips through the cracks. Nothing goes around our vetting process. It all ties all into that platform.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm seeing start to kind of pop up more and more is this idea of multiple, very task-specific agents looking at the same underlying material with very different intent. So if you take that example, maybe you've got a compliance agent that's looking at that content, those contracts, et cetera, but only looking at from a compliance lens and surfacing issues that may be a concern there. Maybe there's a completely separate commercial agent that's looking at it from the standpoint of, is this going to be a profitable contract for us, right? And all of them can be working simultaneously on the exact same content, which is, I think, a pretty powerful thing.
And something like that would tie right into something like a trust center, which was another piece of technology that we have, AI-based, reviews contracts, and you actually upload all of your questionnaires into it. It autonomously answers the questions of the questionnaire based on previous answers, as well as based on written policy that we currently have in place. Again, a lot of implications of AI, at least in our environment. And I know that they can be great across the board for others.
Yeah, I've seen a very similar set of use cases around RFP responses or grant writing responses. Very, very similar kinds of workflows. So it's great to see you working on that. You mentioned the innovation team. It's clear there's a lot of innovation happening. I guess I'm curious whether at Withum that happens naturally and organically, or are there things that you and the leadership team are doing very specifically to encourage that? Like, from a cultural perspective, how does this actually happen?
Yeah, so we actually have a very strategic mindset towards artificial intelligence. It's really from two different angles. It's top down and bottom up. Leadership sees the value in artificial intelligence, but we're always cautiously optimistic on the actual impact of it. We need to make sure that we have KPIs around it so that we can measure the impact. The good news is our innovation team has a great ROI calculator as well as KPI indicator that tells you exactly how our artificial intelligence has impacted our organization. And truth be told, over the last 4 years, or actually 3.5 years, our innovation team has saved us over $15 million because of their automation and their artificial intelligence. So hats off to that team. They've done an absolutely monumental job for the last 3 years. But there's a lot of different aspects of artificial intelligence that also can be done on another side of the coin, security. We're running a very, very lean security team here in the Withum IT department, but we're not necessarily a small team as far as our impact. Small team, but a lot of technology, a lot of artificial intelligence. We're using, again, can't tip my hand to too much. Obviously, this will be aired somewhere, but we're using artificial intelligence on basically every aspect of our environment, whether it is the network, the endpoints, by endpoints I mean laptops, whether it is on the user itself, as well as our data in our data repository. So artificial intelligence is pretty much baked into every aspect of our environment, whether it's next generation firewalls, our networking, or our actual connectivity between the different sites.
That's incredible. And you'll be happy to know we announced actually at BoxWorks just a few weeks ago, um, using similar capabilities and building it into our Shield Pro product, and basically saying AI can help make Box even more secure than it is now by doing the kinds of behavioral analysis that you're sort of referring to there. So I think it's happening everywhere, and we're definitely happy to be a part of that change. With innovation and with cost savings, you always have the risk or the fear of automation replacing jobs, replacing roles, maybe even just changing the roles that people have. So I'm sort of curious, in your industry, and maybe with them specifically, but I just think maybe more broadly, how is that being received by people who are doing those jobs for a living? Are they concerned? And what has leadership been doing to kind of help build trust in the future here?
From a leadership perspective, the message comes directly from the top. Our CEO, Pat Walsh, has been really focused on making a direct message during our town hall saying, listen, AI is not here to replace you. And if you
Yep.
remember earlier in our conversation, I talked about the shortage of accounting majors that are graduating now. The whole point of this is to really empower our people. We're not looking to get rid of anyone. We're not looking to do anything of that nature. My goal is to provide the right amount of technology to make sure that it's impacting our firm effectively. Leadership's goal is to make sure that our people are working or being engaged and are still focused on providing the best client service that they possibly can. And to do that, you have to have the right technology. You have to have the right AI in place. So it's again, it's a two-pronged attack: leadership message as well as bottom up. The good news is newer people coming in, I'm going to say younger, newer staffers that are coming in, they're already looking for that. Not having artificial intelligence as part of your technology stack actually turns younger people away. It actually attracts them if you actually have it as part of your marketing, as part of your onboarding. Say, listen, we've got a bot that can answer you a question. They actually enjoy that because guess what? I put a tablet in a child's hands, and that 2-year-old was able to swipe left and right. Many moons ago, I'm pretty sure if you put a tablet in my hand, I wouldn't know what to do with it, except for breaking it. So it's a different generation. So we have to actually be willing to lean into that generation and leverage them more effectively. And what that does is, unfortunately, there are going to always be some individuals that are resistant to change. That's why you attack it from the bottom up. Gamification. Create some level of fear of missing out. Hey, listen, Jane got a $50 award for coming up with this great idea. Let everybody else get involved in it. And after a while, it becomes infectious and it continues to grow. And that's the mindset that we have here at Withum, making sure that our people are engaged, making sure that they're all excited to be here. And a happy person means great client experience. And that, at the end of the day, that's what we're all about.
Yeah, and you're in an industry, as you said, where you have the challenge of maybe not enough people coming up through in the early stages of their careers who actually have a labor issue to begin with. So
Mhm.
that probably makes it a bit less of a scary thing for people to say, actually, I could use the help because there's not enough of us doing this work.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Have you all started talking about what all of this means in terms of not just how many of these folks there are, but actually the nature of their role? Like, how does the role of an accountant or an analyst or a knowledge manager change in the age of AI?
Right. So what it means is a staff one would now actually be pushed up to the level of staff two, work wise. The
Okay,
responsibilities will still be there. So if you automate a process, there's still going to need to be a human to review it. There still needs to be some level of training so that the staff one understands the why that we're doing this. Simply clicking off or checkbox on any bot can do that. So the
yeah,
understanding is, why are we looking at this? And what that does is, from the top down, it frees up partners from actually helping or and doing more of the work, pushes that work down to the senior managers and manager level, and allows the partners in our organization to go out and become business advisors even more. Allow them to actually do more business development work. From the bottom up, now you're looking at potentially removing one layer from the traditional work to allow the staff one to do more staff two work. More responsibility means, you have better exposure. All too often, we've heard from staff ones, this is kind of mundane. I'm not learning anything. So now with AI, you're owning a process. You're owning the actual totality of a process versus just checking off a box or reviewing documents or doing research. Now, all too often, we've seen research, for example, as another item for artificial intelligence. Research can take sometimes days, depending on the engagement or what you're trying to accomplish. Now you can actually get research done in a matter of, maybe an hour or two, and it's just a matter of validating it versus spending 3 days when you're in the cube researching a particular case.
I think this concept is so important of sort of elevating the roles that people have and taking out the kind of work that mostly people don't really enjoy doing. To your point, the level one folks are doing work that they don't find that interesting, that they consider rote, repetitive, not that challenging, maybe, and maybe they're not learning a lot from it. But it's not so much that we don't need them anymore. It's just that we can now redeploy them on the level two tasks or the level three tasks, and everyone sort of shifts up. And I think
Correct.
that's the vision for how we leverage these things.
Yep. And that should definitely be the vision across the board, not
Yeah.
to replace, but to reskill.
Have you started to think about not just AI, augmenting the work of individual folks, but actually agents that are taking on some specific part of the process completely, maybe managed by people, or how are you beginning to think about agents in the workforce?
For me, it goes back to how the IT department handles artificial intelligence and agents in general. Ultimately, I don't want an agent making critical decisions like shutting off a server, but there needs to be multiple alerts. There, shutting off a task, for example, or restarting a service, that's pretty much standard. That's an auto restart task that can be done on any old school Windows server. Now, imagine taking that to the next tier. You're seeing, for example, me. Let's say Amel is normally working in IT, but suddenly he starts downloading all of these files out of
Mm,
the HR directory,
right.
or looking into client directories where he normally shouldn't. There should be an alert that says, let's put this under a risk management protocol. In a sense, let's start monitoring this to see what's going on, start downloading files to see if there's anything nefarious happening here. If everything clears, it checks off by itself. But a report still goes to someone to validate that everything was clear or not. So that's the way that we do it here at Wood.
I want to pivot a little bit to you personally, and just as a leader who is embracing this innovation, embracing these technologies and capabilities. Are there specific things you would say you do differently now than you did before AI? I mean, it's only 3 years ago now that some of these capabilities came on the scene, but what's changed about your leadership approach because of these capabilities now?
My leadership approach really hasn't changed too much. We're always looking for the next great thing that's out there. So we're always looking and evaluating technology across the board, and that's been the methodology behind the entire firm. Leadership has always invested strongly in technology, which is why we are where we are. But me personally, the only thing that's really changed is how I look at defending against AI-based attacks. So, you have to have artificial intelligence to combat against artificial intelligence. And believe it or not, bad guys are out there and they're leveraging this very, very well. And they're actually probably leveraging it more efficiently than most people because there are no rules and regulations around them. So, again, leveraging that and creating the proper environment that you can understand and learn from the bad guys I say that by setting up like honey pots and things of that nature, or even, if you're a strong enough technologist, you can go on the dark web and actually have these conversations with these individuals, and they'll actually show you how they're breaking into things and all the other things. I actually spent some time, maybe about a year and a half ago, on the dark web where a group of individuals actually created a playbook on how to break into accounting firms. They had dates, deadlines, how to actually break in, because obviously during deadline time, accountants are laser focused on getting the engagements out. But guess what? The bad guys also know that you're under pressure. So guess what? You suddenly get a mystery little pop-up saying, hey, by the way, this is the help desk. You just click on this link and uninstall this one file. And before you know it, you have someone in your environment potentially trying to jump laterally to break into other systems.
Right. That is scary, and I'm glad you're paying attention to it from the defensive side of it. And you make a great point about, the good guys, all of us, are thinking about all the ways that we need to make sure we're compliant, that we're still following all the rules, we're taking advantage of AI, but not doing, not doing it in an irresponsible way. The bad guys don't have to think about that, right? So they've got a bit of an advantage that way. So you're in an industry that's quite conservative. And it feels like today you can say that the firm's really embracing all of this, but was it always true? Did you have work to do early on in a pretty risk averse industry to try and convince the various stakeholders to take on AI and embrace this?
Yeah, I'm actually in a very unique and blessed position where I got into this firm and they were saying, what do you need to make us successful? So it wasn't, I didn't have to come up with a very long 30-page business case. It was a simple conversation where they trusted and believed in my vision. And I said, we need to have these specific components in place. Let's look at it from, analyzing your current environment, coming up with a game plan and understanding where you need to be. And I align my vision with the firm's vision to actually move forward. And I give them the bill of whatever millions of dollars it was. And guess what? They said, yes, let's go ahead with it. It wasn't a very long conversation, surprisingly. So again, not all firms, not all organizations are built that way. There's usually a slightly longer process. But my firm was actually really focused on getting where they needed to be and trusting the process and trusting the team members that worked for me.
That is a great place to be. So you picked a great firm, and it's going well. Now, as you drive all this innovation, you obviously still have to be compliant with all sorts of regulations in both kind of your industry, with the sensitivity of your client data that you're dealing with and so forth. So how did you find that balance? Did you take responsibility for that? Is that another team that's looking at that? Like, how did you make that all work?
One of the things about my position is I actually wear multiple hats, not the chief information officer position. But ultimately, everyone understood that my passion was always in security and keeping everything safe and trying to make sure that I understand how everything works. So to answer your question, yes, ensuring that compliance is where it should be, and we're following the proper regulations, and we don't end up in the news. That falls on my responsibility. But we recently hired someone that actually is head of our GRC, government risk and compliance. He's in charge of reviewing everything, whether it's policy, data repository designs, to ensure that our practice is actually meeting the regulatory standards that were there. Good news for us so far. Everything's been, thumbs up. The only big issue, obviously, are new firms that are coming in. They're not always as up to date as we are. Sometimes they're actually advanced, but in some cases you have to look to see where they have, for perhaps HIPAA data, or maybe something is not following a retention policy, things of that nature. That person's responsible for doing that, and hopefully that's one thing that I don't have to stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning doing.
It sounds like you stay up till 2 a.m. doing other things anyway, so just not that. Just out of curiosity, have you written and published any sort of AI principles or AI guidelines that are sort of followed firm-wide? And what does that look like?
Yeah, that's part of our acceptable use policy, which is part of our handbook. Our team members all have the handbook, and it's actually posted on our internet site, which is actually, you can query it against our internal built AI. We call him Ivan after our founder. You can actually ask a question of what's our policy on mobile devices. It'll look up the employee handbook and give out the answer. So yes, the short answer is yes, we do have our AI policy, common do's and don'ts, and the long version of that is all sitting in our acceptable use policy, which is underneath our employee handbook.
And all powered by an AI chatbot interface, sounds like.
Exactly.
So you can be as vague or as specific as you like on this next question, but I want to ask you in the spirit of experimentation and people testing things out. Sometimes things don't always go as well as you'd like. Things fail. We have a value at Box about failing fast. Can you share a project or an initiative that you started that didn't go as planned and maybe you had to abandon or change course? And what lessons did you learn from that?
More recently, I can tell you one that was very, very dear to my heart. We designed a reporting platform that essentially would allow our team members to understand, where their report card is essentially. So imagine a platform where you can look to see how many days you've been in the office based on obviously firm leadership saying, let's get back into the office for X amount of days. You can look to see how many days you're in the office, how many billable hours that you've actually put in so far. Where are you in reference to your total number that you're supposed to meet? All kinds of other metrics that are pretty cool in there. And it literally pops up on your screen every day. You look at it, you hit acknowledge, you have a digital signature, and you're done. Uh, that was the great idea behind it. And of course, firm leadership, they said this is a great idea. Rolled it out, made an actual application out of it. Wasn't really, it was kind of clunky. Would have issues with failures. Sometimes it would pop up and freeze your entire computer. So, back to the drawing board. The design at its core is still there. We're still keeping that design in place, but we're actually making it more embedded into the web browser now. So hopefully in the next 2 to 3 months, that platform will be finalized and it'll be web-based. So now you're not looking at another application on the endpoint to use up more RAM, or you're not looking at a platform that needs to always be updated. It's part of the Microsoft ecosystem. It leverages Edge, and that's the goal. So, that's one of those classic examples of, what, we should have slowed down and not rushed to design something. We should have actually, looked at the totality of the agreement and said, all right, let's not make it an application. Let's put it here or here. There should have been other options. But again, sometimes things fail, but you fail fast. You fail slow sometimes. Unfortunately, in this particular case, you fail fast, and you try and make the best of it and learn from those mistakes.
Well, and one thing that I've seen is if you restart an effort like that today, and let's say you first did it 6 months or a year ago, the way you would approach it today is actually probably pretty different than the way you would have a year ago because of the capabilities that are available now, coding tools and et cetera. So you probably do it better the second time than the first time.
And that's the great part about being innovative or being part of an innovative firm. There's room for mistakes. It's not a situation where you made a mistake and you're not allowed to touch, XYZ product ever again. It's all right, great. What have we learned from here? Right. So now we know not to do this. Let's take a full review of everything else that's out there today versus making decisions based off of legacy information. For example, hey, I'm going to look at, ChatGPT for everything. No, there's other, language models out there. There's other GPT type platforms out there that you can actually leverage. And they're all, if you actually look at it, they're all kind of specialized now. There's
Right.
one platform I found out maybe a couple of years ago called Tax GPT. Amazing platform for research. Again, there's so many specialized items for artificial intelligence. Now the question is, which one will be the ring to rule them all? I'm looking
Right.
for that one agentic AI or some sort of quantum AI that's going to be able to plug in and rule all of the AIs out there.
And the expression I keep hearing over and over again is these AI capabilities that we have today are the worst they'll ever be, right? It's only going to get better and more powerful. And I think to your point, even more specialized. And thinking about how you orchestrate across all these different specialized agents, I think is the next thing that we all need to figure out. And on that note, I want to have you pull out your crystal ball because I want to ask you some forward-looking questions a little bit. And let me start with, when you think about all these capabilities, what do you think in terms of what's coming, either what's here today and not fully deployed yet, or what's coming with AI? What capabilities do you think are going to most transform your world of professional services?
If you think about it from the account perspective, it's what's going to affect specific verticals. For example, accounting, for example, tax or audit. Tax has so many different subgroups underneath it. For example, automotive or constructive or you know, hospitality. All of those have specific specialities. So underneath that giant umbrella, there are multitudes of small businesses underneath it. So the question that I always say is, how are we going to manage processes better? Not so much the technology that's associated with them. Because from my perspective, software companies will eventually have AI baked into them regardless. 6 or 7 years ago, AI wasn't necessarily in Box. There was RPA, there was a lot of scripting, but it wasn't technically AI. Fast forward to today, AI is baked in. We don't have to invest $10 million in leverage into AI to add to our existing platform. So fast forward 4, 5, 6 years from now, my expectation is AI should be baked in, should be a universal standard. It's kind of like having a SOC 2 Type 2 for every organization. It's a standard. My expectation is really what I said before, and for one AI to rule them all, creating something that can actually govern all other AIs and map out what they actually do, measure out that risk, and as well as measure out the KPIs for each one.
That's really interesting to see. Yeah, I think the AI to rule them all, but with specialists in each of these areas, whether the vertical expertise or, yeah, that's I think that's very very, very likely to kind of play out that way. So when you then think about what the impact of all that is on what a firm looks like in this space, how does it change any aspect of the firm? We talked about some of the roles specifically, but just what does the firm actually look like 5 or 10 years from now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of talk right now in accounting
Yeah,
about creating a chief AI officer. I've seen that at a couple of different locations, slightly larger organizations like Coca-Cola. They can do that. They're 35, 36,000 individuals.
yeah,
I'm not sure if that's something that's going to be plausible in accounting, but it could be. You never know. But I see it as one person that actually will help drive artificial intelligence adoption, implementation, design, and execution, top to bottom, whether it is
right.
Copilot on your endpoint or app developing something completely revolutionary. So that's probably more a director or a senior vice president, depending on the type of how your organization is structured. The way I also see it is that person would actually not necessarily have an army of individuals working for them, but more like dotted lines to all the different uh, um, operational groups, whether it is marketing for distributing the information or change management, whether it is IT from a security and compliance perspective, whether it is app development team to actually build everything. So having an enterprise architect or architecture design plan or a coalition of AI people to make sure that the platform is even actually doing what they're actually trying to accomplish. So again, there's a lot of different components associated with that, and it all depends on number one, the company's appetite for that change. Number two, the vision of firm leadership to say this is where we want to be, and this is how we want to do it. Having technology is great, but the greatest technology on the planet is nothing but a coaster if it's not being leveraged effectively.
So interesting. So sort of a chief AI officer, and I am starting to hear some of those kinds of roles, whether it's called that or something similar. Definitely starting to see that with some of our customers. Um, Open question, what you refer to, does that person have their own team, or are they sort of a dotted line across a number of different teams? And there's obviously pros and cons of those two different models. So that remains to be seen a bit. I don't think we entirely know yet, but definitely some change. How about on the revenue side? Do you see a difference in how firms will bill for their services, more outcome based, anything along those lines? Is it too early to predict?
Yeah, no, actually, I've already had a conversation with Gartner around specifically measuring artificial intelligence and where to invest. Some organizations out there are actually investing 3% of their revenue, 3% of their total revenue in artificial intelligence specifically, not just technology as a whole. It's a very large number in comparison. But again, it all depends on the organization's appetite for that change or the need for artificial intelligence. So in my eyes, I think that it all depends on your organization. Now, the other side of this is there's different flavors of artificial intelligence. Are you leveraging it from an app development side? Are you leveraging it from security? Are you leveraging from a utilization perspective? So there's lots of different ways to do that, and all those different measures will actually affect different groups or different pockets of your population. Firm admins are generally the most resistant to change because they feel that these bots are here to take over their position, not so much professional services staff. So for me, it's making sure that firm admin understand that this is about maximizing their time so that they're not doing mundane tasks, that they're actually understanding the process. And what that does is ultimately affects profitability to go nothing but up. And at the end of the day, you can run a $1 billion organization at this with the same headcount as a $700 million organization.
Makes perfect sense. We've talked a lot about possibilities, but I now want to talk a little bit about limitations. And specifically in your industry, obviously it's a very knowledge-centric industry. So AI is incredibly helpful there in terms of just being able to have vast amounts of knowledge. But there's also a lot of human judgment applied in things like advisory services, even tax strategy, right? For a client, there's not necessarily a right answer, but a bunch of different ways you could do things. And human judgment and experience has to come into play there, at least today. Do you see any limitations in terms of what AI's role will be in those kinds of things going forward? Will there be a point where you say, yeah, AI is great, but it's not going to do that?
AI will never be a trusted business partner. Let's be honest. And again, I'm thinking about it from the top down, right? So you can't allow AI to run your boardroom. That's number one. You can't allow AI to go into someone's business and say, hey, we noticed you had these 3 different events to take place over the last 3 years in your business. If you actually execute this plan or that plan, you can actually be more profitable. That's called being a trusted business partner. AI can't do that, at least not yet. And one of the main limitations of AI, and if we actually think about this realistically, AI is really based on data. If you don't have proper data hygiene, AI is not going to work for you. You're actually hindering yourself to actually get to your end result by not having proper data. So number one, having a full data assessment or an AI readiness, which will reveal the data issues if you have any, will actually help you understand what that roadmap potentially could be. So ultimately, for me, it's a matter of understanding the totality of what AI is, what it can do for you. And those are the limitations. To talk about this a little bit more from a resource side, having the right individuals in the right positions is absolutely critical. Because, and a CEO's position is not necessarily to make those technology decisions, it's to put the right person in place to help guide those technology decisions. And that would be someone like myself or a head of innovation or head of AI. Those individuals should be the trusted individuals. Having the wrong person there could be catastrophic by the tune of millions or tens of millions of dollars, ultimately, if you have a long tenure.
Right.
Now, with that being said, the technology itself, if you have clean data, you actually have the great data governance, and you have the proper people around it, and you have a coalition of individuals that's actually focused on leveraging AI effectively, then you have a great recipe for success.
Very, very helpful. And I wonder if I could ask you for a bit more advice for some of your peers out there as they are thinking about launching new AI initiatives. What have you found would be really important for them to keep in mind in terms of key do's and don'ts when you're starting some new AI initiative? What should you watch out for? Make sure you definitely do. Make sure you definitely don't do. Help out your fellow CIOs and innovators out there.
Yeah, I think anyone that's currently a CIO knows this already, but we're just going to cover it a little bit. If you're looking for any AI or technology for that matter, you have to really understand what is the goal of the organization, where are you trying to be, and number two, you also have to really be, you have to understand what is the technology going to overall impact, right? Is the change going to adversely affect the user population or maybe your client base? Or is this change going to be so painful to convert from the existing platform to the new one? Is that going to effectively have you lose resources? Again, those are decisions that are ultimately left to the business mind to decide, but you have to be able to make those arguments before you actually pull the trigger on them. Lastly, it's looking down the line, try to be a little bit forward thinking and think about where this platform is going to be in the future and how it will integrate with all other systems that are already in place. So streamlining is one of the ways that you can try to reduce overhead. So is the platform in a good situation or a good spot to potentially expand in your environment and take over responsibilities of other platforms, whether it is let's say practice management, for example, or a workflow system that you have in place. So you have to be a little bit forward thinking and be careful on how you're actually pushing these technologies out. One of which is for me is Workday. We're currently in the process of deploying Workday. And what that's going to do is affect our HRM systems, going to affect PSA, going to affect our practice management, it's going to affect our entire finance team. And that's a 3-year journey for us, which is actually a very, very fast roadmap. I've had conversations with other CIOs and other accounting firms where it's taking them 4, 5, sometimes 6 years to get this sort of change implemented. Again, I equate it to having open heart surgery while running the Boston Marathon. It's very, very difficult for you to rip out your practice management platform while you're a time and billing based organization. So our time is our revenue. Stopping that or somehow having any sort of errors in that system could be catastrophic.
Yeah, you've got to keep doing all of that while you're changing. You hear that analogy of changing the engines while the plane's in flight. I love that.
Exactly.
Uh, Having open heart surgery while you're running a marathon is I'm gonna tuck that one away and use it. When you're thinking about these initiatives, how do you think about measuring success? And there could be things like accuracy, efficiency, client satisfaction, employee satisfaction, perhaps all of the above. Just what do you sort of zoom right in on from a metrics perspective?
Well, the main thing for us as an organization, and we really focus on customer client satisfaction. Efficiency is great, but having the customer be happy with the end product is paramount for us as an organization. The other thing that we also always focus on is our end users. We try to make sure that we leverage the right technology to balance out their work-life balance. Let me give you an example. Imagine, for example, you have a process that takes about 1,000 to 2,000 clicks to execute, but you can actually apply the correct amount of technology to actually reduce that to perhaps 50, sorry, but to perhaps 500 clicks. What that does ultimately is it allows the individual to focus on process. It allows the individual to not have to put in 80 hours a week to execute the same amount of tasks, which ultimately become mundane. And what that does, it has an adverse effect on the person's mind or the person themselves, where they tend to want to leave. Our talent team tracks and makes sure that we monitor and we report on our retention. We're very big on retaining our staff because of the sheer fact that we invest a lot of time, a lot of effort to get that person trained and be comfortable and be part of our ecosystem. Because ultimately, every staff one has the potential to become our next partner, and that's the message that comes directly from our CEO, and it's been that message from all the previous CEOs. So ultimately, again, leveraging the right talent, leveraging the right technology, and executing properly is critical for our organization.
So it sounds like client satisfaction is at the top of the list, and the accuracy and the quality of the work that you do for them, employee satisfaction, and then things like efficiency and so forth, kind of important too. But those are really paramount. And I love what you said about efficiency is not necessarily a bad thing. You would think in a professional services firm, it's like, oh, we want to maximize billable hours, but the idea that if you can be more efficient, charge the customer less for the same service, right? That actually allows you to increase your revenue by going and getting more clients. And that's, I think, maybe a counterintuitive way for people to think about it, but I love it.
Just a different way of thinking. And again, that's what makes Withum a little bit different than a lot of other firms out there. We try to take it from a different angle. We try to be a little bit more, innovative in our thinking.
So one of the things I think about a lot in my role is, adoption of technology, and how do you get end users to actually do something different than they do today? So pretty broad question, but as you think about getting to those outcomes where you are introducing new technology, but you're doing it for a reason to get to one of those things: better client satisfaction, better employee satisfaction, more accurate, more efficient, et cetera. What approaches do you take to actually get adoption of these new tools and technologies across with them?
Excitement, gamification, all those words that you can possibly think of. We pull every lever we can. We actually went as far as hiring a director of change management in our organization. Because again, I said this earlier, there's nothing worse than $1 million piece of technology that's not being leveraged. It's nothing but a overgrown coaster from my perspective. our change management team, our marketing team work very closely with IT and innovation development to make sure that we understand what's coming down the pipeline. We understand how it's going to impact our reach. But we actually even present at every office meeting to say, hey, here's what's coming up in IT. Here's what's coming up in technology. And here's how it may affect you. And, one of the big things that we tend to do is we create champion groups for each technology platform. What that
Okay.
does is it allows not so much me, the technology person, everyone, no one wants to hear from the IT guy, but you do want to hear from your coworker,
Hmm.
a tax supervisor or a tax partner or an audit supervisor, audit partner that says, hey, I've been using this thing that, the tech guys made. It's amazing. It cut down, it did this for me in no time. Word of mouth from someone that does what you do it goes beyond any marketing message that I could possibly put out. And that's our plan of attack from that level. From the top down, it's all about making sure that we understand measurable change. Having an ROI calculator and having a KPI calculator really shows the value of everything that we're investing, and shows us where we made bad investments as well as great investments, so that this way we can double down on the great ones and avoid the bad ones.
I love the example of the, showcasing people who are taking advantage of these technologies. So that it's not, the message is not coming, from you as a technology leader, but from someone who's actually driving work improvements in the business. We actually do something very similar at Box. We have a lunch every single Friday for the entire company. And every week we showcase something that someone's done. We call it Box on Box, but taking advantage of Box AI to make their work process a bit more efficient or a bit better or higher quality. And those have been really, really resonating with the company, because again, it's not our CIO telling everyone how great it is. It's actually a salesperson or a CSM or a consultant saying how great it is, and it's a big, big, big difference. So let me kind of end with a fun one then. When some of these things go really, really well, how do you celebrate wins for an AI project or a digital project across the employee base?
We celebrate wins on a monthly basis. We have we have a great team that actually highlights all of our great innovators for our team. So, and this is by team, I mean globally throughout the Withum ecosystem. If anybody comes out with a great idea, number one, there is a stipend given for that great idea. If that great idea goes to production, there's another great stipend for it. So again, you get everything from gamification to excitement. We do a publication, and that person is celebrated. And at the end of the year, the most innovative person literally gets to go on stage with our CEO and is celebrated by the entire firm and get a giant plaque, actually a giant crystal statue, saying that they are the innovator of the year. I think there's no better bragging right to say, listen, I did this, I impacted the firm. And creating that sense of pride and that swell within everyone, especially someone coming in out of college saying, you don't have to be a partner to get this. You can be a staff one. And they had this staff ones that have actually won this award. It's a tremendous honor to be part of that. And it just creates that sense of, inclusion at our firm. And that's one of the things I was always proud of by joining with them, that sense of inclusion.
That is a very, very cool tradition. So please continue that, maintain that. We definitely find that showcasing these wins and giving credit to the people who are actually doing the work and coming up with these ideas is really the way to go. So congrats on that. We are short of time. And so I just want to say, Amel, thank you so much for all of your insights, for sharing the time with us, and some of the advice that you provided to the folks who are listening. We're all on this journey together. We're all learning together. We're making mistakes. We're learning as we go and hopefully improving. And your insights are invaluable for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into the AI First podcast, where we go beyond the buzz and into the real conversations shaping the future of work. If today's discussion helped you rethink how your organization can lead with AI, be sure to subscribe and share this episode with fellow tech leaders. Until next time, keep challenging assumptions, stay curious, and lead boldly into the AI First era.